I was telling you, when we do each episode, I try to think, let's have one big topic and then we might hit some other ones depending on how much time. But we actually purposely make this like a limited format. We don't want it to be like a 3.5 hour show, etc. So for this one, I was looking at this PGL Bucharest tournament. I was watching all the big results. And I have to say, in general, if someone does like an underdog run, as you've seen on past episodes when we did it, I want sort of the run to finish. So we have that event as like an entire, encapsulated entity and we can discuss it all and project forward. But the problem is the tournament's still ongoing, so we actually don't even know who'll win. Will the run even continue? So I thought the obvious team to talk about for me is Team Liquid. Because I don't know about you, but when I saw this field, right, the big name obviously is Aurora, because if you look at where they are in the world and who they are as a team, on paper they're supposed to just win this tournament, even though certainly they seem like world class at not winning when they're supposed to do. But after that, to me, the other big names that I was looking at was the likes of Team Liquid. I'm thinking, if I look at this field, I look at the roster of Team Liquid, and I want to believe this is a team that has a crack at getting to the playoffs of the major, again, you should be like winning or coming second in this tournament. This should be one where absolutely you can get it done. Look at the player strength you've got. Look at like the core you've got. Look at some of the other teams too. These are teams where most of the rest of the field would go out in like the first or second Swiss stage at a major. They're not teams that are competing to get to the top 8. So obviously Team Liquid, I know it's like a meme of like Team Liquid always let you down. They kind of have. Like they kind of are doing it again in a different fashion this time. So where is Team Liquid at for you, Pimp? Like what are your thoughts relative to the expectations for this event, and what are they fucking up? Because I feel like everyone else is with me. Everyone else wants to believe in Liquid, but they just let you down. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's kind of what I feel too, to be honest. Because you're right. When you look at the lineup and when you look at them signing Elish, and when you look at them, actually having a solid lineup, I feel they should do better. And I thought they were on track to do better. I think the tournament coming into Bucharest was decent. Was it Fisher or something where they placed third? Again, arguably should have been in the final, maybe done a little bit better. But that's a decent step with Elish for a first tournament. Coming into Bucharest as well, as you said, it's a tournament that Liquid realistically could target to be at least in the final, maybe even win it, depending on how far they are in the progress. And then obviously it's fresh still, but losing to Saw is just not good enough. And losing to Saw 13-2 and 13-1 now,
yes,
winning the first map is fucking horrendous. And that just summarizes where I have Liquid right now. I legit think Liquid could be part of the playoff team for the major. I legit think that this core of players could become great in 2026. When I say great, I don't necessarily think they're going to be a top 3 team, but I definitely think they'll be an established team within the top 10, top 5, maybe even if they figure it out. But it's the result against Saw that reminds me, that's Liquid. That's part of their fucking DNA, that whenever you think they're good, whenever you think, they figured it out now, then they completely fuck it up in a way that makes you remember, this is where Liquid is at. Because losing to Saw in this tournament, we'll maybe discuss it later. Saw is playing good, and they have everything to play for. No major. This is the major for them, right? This is the most important tournament for them. Whereas for Liquid, it's a prep tournament for the major. So there's something to that. But losing in that fashion to Saw just reminds you that even though Liquid will look great in a group stage at the major, then they can easily, whoever the fuck they play in the next game, lose out. And that's why my confidence is lost. They have everything they need. Elish, Nurge, you name it. Good players, solid rifles. Shuhei should be a great in-game leader. If Natfly, especially him getting better, is your worst player, then you should be fine. Yeah, he's smurfing. So, I have them as a team that they could make the playoff at the major, but I wouldn't be surprised if they look good at the group stage, they make the playoff, and you're like, they could go all the way, and then they lose 2-0 in a quarterfinal, getting a combined 6 rounds, completely disappear face of the earth from one moment to another. And that's my issue with Team Liquid.
Because one of the problems I have with this particular roster is it's one of those ones, mate, I always say, where on paper it looks so good. Like every time I go and look at the scoreboard, I'm like, bro, with those players, you should easily beat these teams. And then I even look at the stats, and what's crazy is, mate, the stats are fine. Like if you go and you look and you do all the standard one, context of this exact lineup, LAN, top 20, you're going to see, mate, these numbers actually should be capable of making the finals and winning any of these, especially beating lesser teams. In fact, the only player I actually think is like way below standard is probably just Nerds. Like if you look at the roles he plays and how good he was in Heroic, on paper he probably should be like a bigger fragger, etc. But you look elsewhere, like Elish, by the way, still does all the T-side shit he was doing on FaZe. He's still awesome at that. Like, I'm not as big a fan of Ultimate, but I'll tell you what, I always say this, he's not bad. He's certainly not a bad player. Like, he has a decent floor to his game. In fact, maybe even that's the angle I'll ask about first. For me, the two people I do look at the most is Nertz and Ultimate. Because I'm with you. Naf, by the way, that's like an old narrative, guys. He's in this roster, he's turned his game around. He's fucking really good again. Like, maybe it was true there was some sort of weird overlap with JKS, or he didn't like Twist's calling stuff. Whatever it is, he seems like that's fine. Shooter seems like he does a decent job, by the way. We'll get to some of that later. But the two players I do look at is Nertz and Ultimate. Because like I say, one, I just think Nertz can be a better player. Like, I've just seen him do it in past years. And then the Ultimate one is hard for me, because I will say this. If I look at his numbers, there aren't that many AWPers in the world have much better numbers. But his problem is he doesn't have a name. The other four people have a name. You know what I mean? Like, look what I just said about Nertz. I will give Nertz the benefit of the doubt for how he's played the last few years. I'll say you can get back to the top again, mate. The problem for Ultimate is he's never been a top player for me. So it's not even that I want to hate on him. I just want to look at the roster and go, if you said you can only make one roster move, I'd probably try and get a named up. You know, someone that I actually can believe has a higher ceiling or has done it the big time. So what do you think? What's your take on these players?
Yeah, I think you're right in pointing out Nertz and Ultimate first and foremost. Those are the two, where I'm like, Nertz, you should be better. Like the Nertz we had in Ends, he was insane. Like, he was so fucking good, and he's never really fully come alive in Team Liquid. We see flashes, we see instances of it, but it hasn't been the same. And I don't know if it's him or if it's them not utilizing him or not putting enough trust in him. And I'm not sure how Elise joining the team is going to, maybe take away more space for him. They do share a similar way of approaching the game where both of them can be aggressive, but both of them can also be a bit baity in a sense. So maybe that could help him, maybe to push him in one direction or another that is more suitable for him. But I'd agree. I think Nertz is, I'm willing to gamble on him coming back to a level, because I also do think that he's close to world class when he's at his best. And as you said, with Ultimate, not the case. I think for me, he's the most frustrating one, because I've actually been praising him for showing up in some of the harder moments. I remember doing the major against, was it Mouse, elimination game 0-2. He was the one player keeping them alive for the majority of 1.5 map, where he went absolutely nuclear on Mirage and was the only reason Liquid came close knocking out Mouse. There was another tournament as well. Maybe it was Cologne or something, but it feels like he has those pop-off moments at big tournaments where you're like, if you just play like this more often, or if you play at 80% like this more often, you would be great. You would be not necessarily a difference maker on the server, but you wouldn't be a liability. But my issue is that he's showing that he has that, incredible high ceiling, but for the vast majority of the time, the floor is too low for my liking. But that's also, what's happening for a lot of different AWP players right now. In a lot of different teams, the AWPs are struggling. Same for Ultimate. It seems to be either you are elite in CS2 or you don't really have too much impact. And my biggest issue with Ultimate is that, yes, I would point towards him instantly and be like, he's the one I would probably change. But I don't really see who's the obvious change in that regard. Like, who could you get if you're Team Liquid? I would advocate for Dexter, to be completely honest. Again, disregard, how he's behaving, how he is to play with. But I think in terms of raw talent, that would be an upgrade, and that would be a banger lineup. Like, if you're if your worst player is Naf, or if you're like if your core player is Nertz, Elise, and then Dexter on the AWP, having Naf as a supportive element, Shu as an in-game leader, that's a banger lineup. And I do think, for my money at least, Ultimate, he's great. He can be great. I don't know why he's inconsistent in Team Liquid, if that's an Ultimate issue or if that's a team issue. Truth to be told, Twist in-game leading, Shu in-game leading, Twist leaving, it probably hasn't been easy for Ultimate to find that sort of consistency, but he hasn't shown me that he's able to rise above that. So I would bank more on Nertz coming back alive, because I know, as you said, he's been world-class before, whereas Ultimate, he has pop-off moments. Everyone does once in a while, to be honest, but the floor is not high enough for me, and especially not as an AWPer. So I'd probably, if I were to pick someone out...
I like the shout, mate. Because, by the way, he's obviously available. Like, he even tweets every now and then that, he's like thinking of coming back or whatever the fuck. Like, it's just he's on one of those Falcons ones where you just get probably like half your really good salary and just sitting on the bench. And sadly, I imagine also, even though they spend a lot of money, guys, they're not idiots. It's like the Premier League. If you're Chelsea, fan team you might like, you also have to look at the net spend. It's not about how much you spend. Like, if people don't know, Chelsea sells a lot of players too. They actually don't always have the craziest net spend overall, because they sell 200 million worth of players. That's the thing with Falcons. They don't just want to let people go for free, mate. They want to actually get a buyout. Their problem is, like a lot of people, VP, I'm talking to you as well. You don't get any buyouts, you idiots, because you bench these players, then we don't see them play CS. Like, it's why if you notice, what you actually need if you're a player is someone like me, you Sponge, or you, to just never shut the fuck up saying this person's still around. Like at this point, I always say JKS should just pay 10% of his contract to Sponge. Like, he wouldn't get these contracts if Chad never shut the fuck up mentioning that he's out there sitting on a bench somewhere still waiting to come back. Like, people forget your real facts. I know what you mean, Pim. First of all, I do think the Dexter shout's a good one, especially because if you say that about Ultimate, I'm with you. He's had a lot of turbulence with his IGLs. But I'll tell you a really good thing about Dexter. Mate, I don't think he gives a fuck who the IGL is. It just seems like he does his game. You know what I mean? Like, he has that, that ego where he just plays how he wants to play, for good or for ill. By the way, that's probably what you need in Liquid. They're a team, this reminds me of Fury before Molodoi, that's never fucking played around the AWPer. They just don't see the game that way, you know what I mean? So there's that part. And then the other part is, if you don't go with Dexter, right, bear in mind you're not buying Simple. Like, that ship sailed at this point in time. It seems like if you were Liquid, you would have done that already. You're going to have to do the really hard thing, which is gamble on some CIS up that none of us know. And as we've seen, you never know what you're getting. That is what you call in English a grab bag, Pimp. Like, it's like when you go into the bargain bin, you can pull out Molodoi. Oh my God, it's Molodoi. Or you can pull out Grix. And everyone thought Grix was fucking what Molodoi was supposed to be. And maybe it's the other way. Who knows? Maybe it's the other way around. So I feel like, listen, I don't hate going the grab bag. But the problem is, if you pull out a shit one, it's going to ruin this roster and people are probably going to get fired.
Yeah, true. There's also the world where it works out. You know, there's also I still lost belief in this 5-man roster. I think they can figure it out. I think Leash is obviously the key to success.
Agreed.
If they can rally behind him, and if they can rally behind finding a system where he's comfortable in, and where Ultimate is just doing decent, you know, doesn't have to be a star, just do decent, then I think there's enough firepower in Elise, Nerds, and Nafly. I think that's the biggest, and I'm glad you said it, because that narrative is like, I still see people saying it, and I still hear people saying it on broadcast as well, that Naf is struggling, and like he's been banging like the last 3 months. He's at a 1.17 rating, whereas for the year he's 101. Like he's almost twice as good as he was before. It's a crazy turnaround for Naf, and I kind of respect Liquid for giving him one more chance, because let's be honest, with the numbers that he put up in the beginning of the year, he was.
If he wasn't Mr. Team Liquid, he'd be fired right now, mate. You know what I mean? Exactly. He'd be on that bench waiting his contract out.
He even said himself, like, if I were Liquid, I would have fired me. Like, I didn't expect.
By the way, fair play to that. But exactly, terrible thing to say for you to say your career, but fair play to admit it. That's pretty baller.
Exactly. So I feel like there's still some untapped potential around Team Liquid with Elise in it, and it's just the fact that they lose to Saw the way they do today, and it makes me doubt, you know, because let's say they beat Saw, let's say they go into the final of Bucharest Masters, then I mean, whether they win that or not, who cares? You know, that's still Liquid going into a final. That's a good result. That's a step in the right direction. That is promising for the major. So I think there's still hope for this lineup, but I think if they don't figure it out, if the major is going to be another, 9 to 12, or they go into the quarterfinal but get banged out by an average team or whatever, then I probably would look towards Ultimate. That's the one position where I feel like you could do something, but they don't have to right now. I think it's a solid lineup. It's a solid team, and let's be honest, Liquid and the expectations for them, given that they've been so poor for such a long time, they lowered the bar a little bit. So we're not in a rush to see them come back to be a top 5 team, because they're not really, And as you said as well, that's something I've been speaking a lot about it on the desk lately, but it's budgets. As you said, like, there's a lot of teams right now who, even openly, Mouse is a great example, saying that, listen, we put in a lot more budget behind our team. We re-signed Jimfat to a contract. We spent like a top 5 team in the world. So now we expect to perform like a top 5 or top 3 team in the world. Same could be said for Liquid. I think it's very obvious if you see how Liquid manage the team. They don't go out there and splash money on players. They don't go out there and just sign a player whenever they have a budget for the year, and if they use that budget in the beginning of the year, then so be it. Then they'll have to roll with what they got, and I think that's part of the reason why the lineup didn't change. Why Neff actually got to stay. They wouldn't have kept Neff had they had an obvious replacement for Neff. They wouldn't be more expensive, or they wouldn't cost a shit ton of money, because they already spent the budget for the year. Getting Shuhei wasn't cheap. Getting Elish back isn't necessarily cheap. I know that's probably easier with Twist, and that could have been a turnover deal where it's not too expensive. But overall, I do know Liquid to be a team that has a budget. They stick to the budget, and it's not like Steve, the team manager, can go to Victor and be like, I need another 100K, or I need another 500K to buy this player. He'd just be like, no, you had your budget from the beginning of the year, make it work. And I think that's part of what's underrated as well when community and when experts are like, oh, they should have signed this guy, or this guy's free now. Sure, but had he been free in the beginning of the year when they had the budget to spend, maybe they would. Yes. Now we're at the end of the year, and they don't have that money laying around. No team basically have another 500k just laying around to be spun or to be bought out, unless you're Falcons at this moment. So it's just a different time where we have to take that into context as well.
No, by the way, on that angle, because that's obviously the classic thing you see on all the forums where they go, fire Joker Steve. It's like, he doesn't play the game or coach it, bro. Like, I'll actually give the comparison point. Mate, Team Liquid is like Man United. These players they sign are good players. You see that the second they go elsewhere, like fucking Hoylands, they tear up everywhere else they go, mate. They sign them because they're good elsewhere. They're good later. Like if you look at this roster, it's a good roster. These are the players I would, except Ultimate. These are the players I would sign. And by the way, if you ever go back, what you just said there, Pip, you nailed it. They signed Ultimate after they'd already wasted some super team budget. That was where you had to gamble. That was the gamble on. Listen, I know Poles don't like to be considered Eastern Europe, but listen, mate, everything east of Germany, just fucking Eastern Europe to the rest of us, we're all chauvinists. So that was a gamble. And initially, it was even not a bad one, min-maxing the budget. No, I know what you mean. I don't even blame that aspect. I've got a stat for you, though, mate. I was digging in on hltv.org, as we all do, and I've found the stat that I think helps explain some of the confusion, bro. Because I don't think it's the players in general. This is the stat right here. If you do the classic FTU page, where you get the firepower teamwork utility, and you put the Liquid roster, well, you just put the LAN, and you just put last 3 months, top 20. So the classic filters, right? Bro, all the stats are fine, round win percentage. There's one that jumps off the page, which is when you put all those filters, 4v5s, they are 16th on the list. They just don't win in any 4v5s. If they ever go down a man, it's just over for them. Whereas, like, their number is really low as well, by the way, mate. Like, put it this way, Falcons is like 11% above them. Like, and people think Falcons has no team play, like, bro, that's an alarming one. It can't be that you always have to be 5v4, that you always have to get the opening kill. Like, if I know in theory, this is why even the best team in the world, Falcons in this, is only 37%. I understand most of the time you lose if you lose the first kill. But if you're Liquid, this basically implies it's almost just over for you. Like, you win 1/4 of the time if you just die the first guy. If you have this roster, mate, like, yeah, overall, I get that the stat can't ever be that high. But again, we're talking about if you're playing against Saw and you lose the first man, the round can't be over. Like, there has to be some potential. With players like Elise, there has to be a chance to fight back. I'd have to look at the demos to find out what's going on, but I do get the feeling people do have the sense, this is what I mean by, they never define it, but it's the idea that Liquid lets you down somehow.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and I think that's lack of explosivity on the server. To be completely honest, like that 4v5 thing, the best example is Falcons. You know, it almost doesn't matter because if you have Nico alive, if you have Kyusuke alive, if you have Modesty alive, even more so, he can turn around the round, you know, by himself, getting a multi-kill, and all of a sudden you're in a 4v3. I think that you know, some teams obviously rely more on team play, they rely more on setups, they rely more on trading, and there's to some degree when you use those stats, like you also have to look at the trade percentage, how much is actually being traded, and how much is them playing 4v5 for plus 10 seconds or whatever.
Well, the mad thing is their trading stats fine, mate. The mad thing is, on paper, that's why I say this one just jumps off the page. Everything else is there.
And that's like a playmakers, but that makes sense when you think about the lineup, right? Elish is a great playmaker, but he's not the type of player that just explodes in a round, you know, and gets 3 kills in a matter of no time. He does it a little bit more calculated. Like Elish is all about, you know, step by step. It's all about, you know, the way we described him is that he's a player that thrives when he knows what everyone around him is doing, and when he's not fully comfortable in a teammate's play or in a call or whatever, then Elish also drops down to a level where he's not as great anymore. So he doesn't have that explosivity to him. And same could be said for Nerds. Again, it's a player that is not necessarily turning around the round in a matter of a second. You know, it's not a Brokey, it's not a Modesty, it's not those players that has that ability to just all of a sudden do something completely insane because they play on the intuition or because they have the skill level of Modesty. So that is an issue, and that's something again that when you evaluate Ultimate as an AWPer, you would love to have an AWPer who can do that.
Great.
Dexter, great example. You know, he is the type of player who would do something
win a clutch or something. Yeah, stupid. Absolutely.
Win a clutch, you know, find himself in a 4v5 and be like, fuck this, I'm going to do this now. And then all of a sudden it will be turned around. You know, they don't have that kind of personality within the team. Even Twist, when he was in Liquid, is again more calculated. You know, he's a smart player. He's not necessarily taking the biggest of the biggest risk in order to turn it around. So that's an issue. And again, how do you fix that? Do you try to make Nerds that kind of player that is a little bit more aggressive? Do you sign a player that has that ability? Do you, even if your team Liquid, have you localized, like, do you internally feel that's an issue? Or is that just us, you know, looking at that stat being like, that's an issue for you? So it's a good question, but I don't know. That's why I said, you know, I feel like Liquid, there's still hope, because I do think that out of all the problems they have.
People do forget that Elijah only did just rejoin, Pip. We keep doing this thing with some teams where it's like when Shuey joined, we blame them for the shit that happened when they weren't there. So you got to give him like a few tournaments.
That's the thing, yeah. And I have seen it at Fisher when they placed third, decent. Now another tournament where they you shouldn't lose to Saw the fashion you did right here, but it's a decent tournament for Team Liquid. It's not a disaster. Let's put it that way. So it'll be interesting to see them at the next couple of ones, and then obviously at the major, the big one. Because I do feel that if Liquid doesn't make the playoff, or if they don't find themselves in stage 3, being a 2-2 team, then that would be disappointing, especially with the landscape of Counter-Strike right now. But I actually feel quite comfortable saying that I do think they will. I'm not sure if they make the playoff. Depends on who they draw on a 2-2 game. Definitely won't go 3-0 in stage 3. But it is a team that has the capabilities and has the abilities and the player material to do well. It's just a question of how well, and then the consistency issue. But I guess that's a good thing with the format at the major. You play so many games. You play so many best of 3s, especially if you enter in stage 2 as well.
Yes.
You can have a game where you just suck and lose, 13-1, 13-2 to so on. Then the next one, you'll be great. It won't necessarily be defining for your tournament. So I feel quite comfortable saying that Liquid is on the right path. But do you want to speed up the process by finding a better player than Ultimate? Maybe. Do you want to give it some more time? Maybe. How much budget do they have to work with next year? I think they placed second at the EWC Club World Championship. I'm pretty sure they got 4 million from that, and I'm quite certain, again, speaking economics, that a lot of teams are basing their budgets.
Oh, for sure. And by the way, winning in CS would help them again get to this similar sort of prize. It's even worth the money probably and reinvest it in with you.
Exactly. And people forget $4 million is a shit ton of money to run Counter-Strike teams and esports teams as a whole. So yeah, I think Liquid is in a decent spot, and I think will have a budget next year to better the team if needed. But for now, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what you feel about him, but I feel like
I've got an angle
on
for
the cusp of playoff.
More cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or be a pleb and don't.